and the benefits they actually bring. Because the big question and challenge that we are facing is, while we make certain statements that we are in fact planting trees or educating people, we have not been able to validate that, so a scorecard is in fact quite necessary. As we live in a very difficult climate today, where climate change is a real concern, not just in the rural areas, but also here in urban areas, we have increased the need for more green areas in the countryside. Therefore, the mining industry, as you all know, is viewed as an industry that can either make or break the future of the environment in our midst. At least that is what is being portrayed. Therefore, our chamber has agreed to collaborate with the World Wildlife Fund under the leadership of Mr. Lorenzo Tan, wherein we will push for an integration of area development in the protection of biodiversity, intelligence allocations of resources that, as you all know, are the lifeline of our people. And in bringing the level of mining at a par where industrialized, resource-driven countries are already operating. The industry has already in place third-party monitoring of our activities, including those pertaining to our environmental management systems. In fact, a number of our member companies are already ISO certified. Another initiative that we've started is a memorandum of understanding was signed with the Department of Education, whereby the Chamber, through its member companies, has committed to, among others, support, publicize, promote, as well as provide and seek funding for the Department of Education's Adopt a School program. The understanding stipulates that the Chamber will conceptualize, facilitate, coordinate, and implement projects under Adopt a School, which was an act out of 1998, to benefit public schools, their students, and particularly mineral development host communities, which are very much impacted by our activities. For most of you who don't realize this, you get actually 150% tax benefit on your donation. So it's a real opportunity for us to consider, since we, in fact, are already providing so many school facilities to so many of our communities. Chamber member companies have agreed to formally include the DepEd Adopt a School program in their social development and management plans, the public school education advancements projects from the kindergarten to high school, through a campaign dubbed as Minahan para sa Karunungan at Kinabukasan. Our chamber has committed to donate over 25 million seedlings over the next 5 years to the National Greening Program of Government. This commitment is on top of the Adopt a Mining Forest program of the Philippine Mine Safety and Environment Association. It might interest you to know that the mining industry has been planting over 1.5 million trees yearly, making it the largest contributor to our country's reforestation efforts and carbon sequestration. I think I might add that's even larger than the Philippine government's own program. Our chamber has been tapped as a key stakeholder and implementing partner by the United Nations Development Program in the introduction, implementation of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, or EITI, in the Philippines. We have reasons to champion this governance mechanism because we know this fits well in the Aquino administration's anti-corruption drive, and as an industry, it is our desire to be transparent in reporting all the taxes that we pay, both to the national and local governments. The speeches given by the Chinese Ambassador Liu Jinchao and Chilean Ambassador Roberto Mayorga during the conference were also testimonies of the importance of our mineral resources. We shall continue to harness the mining investment outcome of our President's visit to China and learn from and increase trade and economic cooperation with our trading partners in order to raise the two-way trade between the two nations. Now, I'm going to come to the second part of my presentation today, where we'll talk about updates within the industry and outside it, the challenges that we face, and some of the recommendations to these hurdles. Well, why has there been so much interest in our mining in recent years? Well, simply because we are one of the richest endowed mineralized countries, and yet we are one of the poorest. And much of these resources are yet to be tapped. It's been estimated that the potential mining wealth in the Philippines is anywhere from 800 plus billion or 47 trillion or 10 times our annual GDP. The latest Mines Geosciences Bureau figures on the Philippines' metallic mineral resources and reserves further highlight the reality of our richness, and these figures are for the metals alone. For the calendar year 2010, the Philippines' metallic production was pegged at over 111 billion pesos. For the 6 months of 2011, production was already nearly 64 billion, and if the production rate continues, we could end up well above 127 billion by end of the year. The National Statistics Coordination Board says the poverty threshold for the entire Philippines in 2009 was about 16,841 pesos, with poverty incidence for families at nearly 21%, and about 27% of Filipinos within the poverty level. The Philippine mining industry is ready and able to help alleviate poverty in the country. In fact, a study by Dr. Ethan Capstan of INSEAD, who was doing a study in Ghana, stated that mining has a multiplier effect on employment of actually not 12, but actually 28 times. Which means that for every direct job created by mining, 28 more jobs are actually indirectly created in allied and downstream industries. Operating metallic mines, well, we've got about 27. We've got a couple of nickel processing plants. I think there's one that's already operating, and we hope that the second large one continues. As you know, we have Pasar, a copper smelter, and one gold refinery. There are about 682 approved registered mining tenements, and there are some 2,000 applications under process. Now, not too many people know that historically mining in the Philippines has contributed much to our economy. In the 1970s, minerals accounted for about 1/5 of our exports. At its peak, mining contributed 24% of total exports. Mining appears to be regaining some lost ground, with the country posting in 2010 the highest GDP growth since 1986 at 7.3, and the mining industry, in fact, rebounded to a growth rate of 12.1% last year alone. Mineral exports led by copper, gold grew over 27%, from 1.87 billion, to 1.87 billion, from about 1.47 billion in 2009. In the first quarter of this year, mining accounted for 4.3% of the country's total exports. I'm not talking about mineral products like processed minerals from Pasar. This is mineral output. In the first quarter of this year, $513 million was produced, still quite a far cry from our heyday, but we are starting to move up. And while it was agriculture that helped keep the economy afloat in the first half of 2011, it was mining along with manufacturing that provided the much-needed boost to our economy against the backdrop of a global economic downturn in the second half of the year, as well as non-government spending. The Mines Geoscience Bureau estimates that investments from priority mining projects will reach $18 billion by 2016. Well, that's if all things run smoothly. I mean, that's a big if. The industry expects investments amounting to about 14 to 20 billion in the next 5 years. I believe if the President is really quite determined to provide jobs for the 94 million Filipinos, as we've seen with a multiplier of 28 to 1, it really can provide that added boost. During the Mining Philippines 2011 conference, we stressed that mining investments in our country reached about $1 billion, but could have easily gone over the $1 billion mark had some projects not been delayed. Mining investments could be much higher if only some of the issues and concerns are resolved. For instance, for 2011 alone, the original DENR figure was over $3.3 billion in investments. They then lowered that to $2.3 billion, and as October has rolled around, that number, I think, is coming down to about $1 billion. And that's partly, in my view, to the lack of permits being processed, the continuous cloud that has been hanging over the Tampakan project, and some other issues that we have all been able to discuss quite avidly recently. As you all know, there is a concerted effort to stop the growth of our industry, despite the industry's continuing efforts to meet the expectations of society as regards the impacts of minerals development on our communities and the environment. I mean, some people literally put roadblocks on front of us. Notable among these roadblocks are, of course, the no to mining in Palawan, the alternative mining bills. I think there's some 24, right, Rocky? The ban on open-pit mining in South Cotabato, with other provinces getting excited. I'm glad that my friend Jojo over here from the League of Provinces is here today. And also, we're starting to see problems arising from the Supreme Court by the issuances of the writ of kalikasan and additional suits that are being filed by many cause-oriented groups against mining projects like the one in the Zamboanga Peninsula, where in fact it was a Cebu-based NGO that filed the case, and it impleaded, ironically of all entities, the Chamber of Mines. There also is a seeming bias against the industry by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples officials who allowed the proponents of the No to Mining movement to make a presentation to the NCIP, and without giving the mining industry a similar opportunity. We, in fact, made a complaint to the Office of President about this issue, and perhaps that there is a need for the NCIP to move out of the National Anti-Poverty Commission and perhaps maybe be better suited under the Office of the President. We in the Chamber of Mines submit that to ensure the success of our industry, the government and the private sector, in this case industry, should take bold steps to bring mining in our country towards world-class standards and work in partnership with key stakeholders in the implementation of those steps. For instance, in order to remove some of the roadblocks, we need to work on a few items. There exists legal infirmities that prevent our nation from benefiting fully from the fruits of the liberalization of our sector. These infirmities are the main roots of the reputational damage that large-scale responsible miners are now suffering from, and the underlying reasons why